Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. We've got a lot of things to talk about today. I'm basically going to go through all of the kit reveals, all the kits for all the Gondor characters. All Things Middle-earth, which is another YouTube channel, covers both this game and Rise to War, got an exclusive drop for Denethor's kit. I'm going to leave that video in the description below. Make sure you go click on that, leave a like, comment, do all that good stuff. Make sure you support him. He got an exclusive. That's a big deal here. I've got basically some of those details for the kits in images here. Shout out to It's a Crow. He dropped this on my Discord. So we're going to go through the Denethor's kit, and then Faramir, Boromir, Sergeant Ara, and Harendale. And I know those are kind of old news, but the entire purpose of this video is at the end, I essentially want to see, okay, I understand how the team works. We can talk about how the team works after understanding all of the Gondor kits. And then we can say, are they going to be good in chapters 1 and 2? And I think it's going to give us some pretty solid clues as to what to expect for chapter 3. So with that, let's just get right into it. Okay, basic attack. Attack the target enemy for 160% damage, 50% chance to grant provoke to the Gondor ally with the highest health that is not in stealth. This is Denethor's basic, right? This is probably going to be Boromir. Denethor's special 1, gain 1 stack of regen for 1 turn, call ally Boromir and ally with the most Banes to assist and grant 1 stack of regen for 1 turn to them. So a little bit of passive healing. And then I think the most Banes thing is supposed to be a call out for the capture and marked Banes, which are going to be pretty prevalent in chapter 3 of the raid. And then Denethor's special 2, let me move my head a little bit. Inflict stun for 1 turn on the target enemy and self. Importantly there. Dispel 2 boons from all enemies. That's massive. If Boromir is an ally, grant 1 stack of Unbreakable to all Gondor allies. So you want to have Boromir as an ally to get that Unbreakable. This is going to be a massive skill. It'd be curious to see, the skill levels on it and the cooldown on it and when you can use it. Do you need to wait to turn 3, 4, whatever before you use this? Or is it ready to go right off the bat? Inflicting stun on himself is kind of thematic lore-wise, maybe, but it might not matter if you already have immunity on him, and we'll get to where he would get the immunity from in a little bit here. Dispel 2 boons on all enemies is also very massive. I guess just let's go back to the stun for a little bit. Basically, the characters that can stun will be Denethor, Gandalf. Nobody has Gandalf. Nuraz's Troll, which is okay. Not actually Nuraz. And then Fro can stun as well, the dwarf tank. So stuns, not a lot in the game, so this is kind of a big deal. Let's move on to the passive ability. There is the man, the myth, the legend himself, All Things Middle-earth. Passive ability, on turn, grant 1 stack of regeneration for 1 turn to self. If Boromir is an ally, also grant 1 stack of regeneration for 1 turn to the most wounded Gondor ally, plus gain 15% focus. This is just to make sure that that stun does land, I guess, because it would not be good if you stun yourself and then the enemy resists the stun that you have for them. Again, just a little bit of passive healing. This is okay, in my opinion, not that great. Leadership ability. This is the important part of his kit. Gondor squad members gain 10% block chance for each living Gondor squad member. So in a full alive squad, you have plus 50% block chance. That's huge. I think double what Ugluk's max leader ability gives you. When a Gondor squad member blocks an attack, they gain immunity for 1 turn at the end of their turn. So you have to already have immunity on Denethor. Maybe, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work, for him to be able to block the stun on himself. Interesting kit. It doesn't really stand out to me. I mean, it's got some interesting mechanics in it, but it doesn't seem super powerful to me. But let's move on to Faramir. This is somebody I'm actually interested in possibly getting still. Attack the target. I'm just going to go through the max abilities here. Attack the target enemy for 190% damage. Obviously doing more for stealth. That's a fine basic for an attacker. Attack the target enemy for 270% damage. And inflict slow for 2 turns. He is another character that will have a slow for 2 turns. Up there with Elrond and Wubate, and I guess Biffer or Beefer. I know it's pronounced Biffer, but Beefer sounds cooler on a large character. And then he gives himself stealth, and all of his kit revolves around stealth. Tackle enemies for 240% damage and 100% additional damage if Gondor ally has been killed. Great AoE, that's got good damage. Also gains stealth. During stealth, assist each time a Gondor or Ranger ally attacks an enemy with a Bane. I think this is actually a really good skill. When an ally Boromir dies, gain 100% turn meter. This is pretty cool because if you do land a 2-turn slow, let's say, on the bomber in Chapter 1, he's going to have slow when he's in the Don't Rush Me phase. And then basically every time one of your other characters attacks, you're going to be able to have Boromir do that. Let's see. It's level 6 passive, though, to always assist when you're in stealth. So, got to be level 60. That's a steep investment. Passives are probably, I think, the most expensive of the abilities. When do you gain stealth? Gain stealth, that's pretty early on. Obviously, the second slow duration is level 6. Also going to be very important to get that. And you gain stealth right away. Okay, so this looks like he might be actually a pretty resource-intensive character to get really, really humming. Let's go to Boromir. Attack the target enemy for 180% damage and inflict weaken for 1 turn. This is going to be important because then Faramir is going to be able to essentially ping them whenever Boromir is doing that. Whenever Boromir is able to apply weaken effectively. It's only for 1 turn though. Attack the target enemy for 240% damage, gain taunt and fortitude for 1 turn. I like this because it is a taunting ability that also does damage. When a tank just taunts, it's kind of it feels like a waste of a turn to some degree, right? Special 2, grant might for 1 turn to all Gondor squad members and attack everybody for 140% damage and then some additional damage if Faramir is an ally, and then Eagle Eye for 1 turn to Faramir, which is great because attacks cannot be missed or blocked here. Passive, gain 15% block chance. So this is just giving himself that extra block chance so that he can apply immunity to himself via Denethor's leadership ability. When a Gondor squad member drops below 50% health, cleanse 2 Banes and gain 2 stacks of regeneration for 1 turn. If the ally is Faramir, grant haste and might for 2 turns. This can trigger once per squad member. This is pretty awesome. You obviously want to keep Boromir and Faramir. Seem to be pretty good together, although I think Faramir is more of a plug-and-play character than Denethor or Gondor. What's concerning to me is that the Gondor squad only has, essentially, this is the only cleanse they have, and it happens once per squad member. I guess we'll see. It depends on the details of Chapter 3, but that doesn't seem like a lot if the point of Chapter 3 is essentially to keep cleansing Banes, like capture and marked off yourself, right? You can, of course, prevent it by just blocking, because Denethor's leadership ability will give you immunity. But let's move on. Sergeant Aura. Attack the target enemy, gain counterattack. I actually really like that as a basic. Inflict marked for 2 turns on a target enemy and reduce their turn meter by 30%. It's marked for 2 turns, so if you know that the bomber is going to go into the Don't Rush Me stage, you could possibly mark them, and then it doesn't matter how many if you end up with 5 tanks, right? Because you can always attack the bomber. Right, 1 stack of defensive to self and 2 most wounded Gondor allies. This is going to be big. It's also a damage attack, which actually it's a lot of damage, but granting defensive is important, especially for the squad, because it guarantees a block on the next attack. So you don't have to worry about block chance if you've just got a bunch of defensives, right? On spawn, gain 1 stack of defensive and grant 1 stack of defensive to 3 random allies. Gain plus 10% focus. That's to basically land the marked. This defensive is super important, especially on spawn, because of it might be useful in Chapter 1, essentially. What I don't know how it's exactly going to work is with the leadership ability of Denethor, because of this line at the end here. When a Gondor member blocks an attack, they gain immunity for 1 turn at the end of their turn. End of the turn, sorry. So, let me tell you what I'm thinking. Basically, when you start Chapter 1, right, they have that Skull Crusher that's going to do his big AoE that lands slow, and I think that's the downfall for a lot of teams, is if they either can't kill the Skull Crusher fast enough, or if they have no way of cleansing that slow. I think it just kind of, you get off to a really bad start, basically. Faramir is going to be faster than the Skull Crusher, and I believe Harendale is faster than the Skull Crusher by 1 speed. He's the other, the last Gondor member. So if your Faramir and your Harendale are up pretty high, then maybe they can just take out the Skull Crusher. If not, the defensives you get from Sergeant Aura on spawn might be enough to basically everybody blocks and then they get immunity. What I don't know is, do you get immunity after you get the slow? Like, do you still do a resistance check for the slow and then you get immunity afterwards? Or do you get immunity right away and it kind of blocks the slow? That interaction and order of operations, I'm not entirely sure about. I'm kind of leaning on you would get slowed, but if you blocked it, you would also get immunity. So Skull Crusher goes, he hits his slow on you, you lose the defensive, you gain immunity, and you gain slow, which makes it less than useful. All right, Harendale, last one. Attack target enemy for 220% damage. Basic. It is basic. This is a 2-turn. He's got some pretty low cooldowns. Attack the target enemy for 310% damage. If the target has nimble, instead deal 360% damage. This attack cannot be dodged. You can actually kill bombers when they're in the don't rush me state with his precise aim, or if you have Eagle Eye. Fearsome Volley, attack all enemies for 170% damage and inflict enfeeble for 1 turn. That's reduced critical hit. On kill, do an extra attack on all enemies for 120% damage. This can trigger once per turn. This is really great for something like Chapter 1. On ally death, gain plus 20% turn meter, 1 stamina for a random ability. If that ally is Gondor, instead gain 40% turn meter, 1 stamina for a random ability, and might for 2 turns. So a few different places where the Gondor squad actually is like, oh, somebody died, and then you kind of, other members of the squad get supercharged. It's both with Faramir, Boromir, and Harendale now, I think. Okay, so let's talk about whether I think they're going to be good in Chapter 1. They have a lot of good AoE, right? Boromir has an AoE. Faramir has an AoE. Harendale has an AoE. And Denethor can actually clear like boons off the entire team, which is pretty strong, especially if they get their kind of eagle eyes up, or if they're, you have multiple taunters or whatever. So I like that. I like that Faramir can assist while he's in stealth, especially if you've got a 2-turn Bane on the bomber before they go into the don't rush me phase, because then you can essentially ping the bomber as much as you want. That's a guaranteed 10 stacks, basically. I like that. I don't know if them not having a cleanse is going to hurt them or not. It's hard for me to say. It really depends on the order of operations. And it also probably depends, like once they get going and there's a bunch of defensives on everybody, or everybody's just blocking all the time, does that matter? Like, does it matter that you're not, because if you can survive that first one from the Skull Crusher and keep on rolling, I think if you can keep getting your immunity up, then it doesn't really matter that much. So I think they could actually be pretty decent in Chapter 1. Chapter 2, I think less so. It's hard to say. I don't know how much single target damage they have. Obviously, his special one in Harendale is pretty strong. Sergeant Aura doesn't seem to be doing as much. Counterattack is fine. Boromir, I mean, people are granting might. That's great. He's got weaken, also fine, but it's not really crit focused. Nothing in these kits are really crit focused. It's hard to tell how they are going to deal with momentum. I think Faramir's okay because he's got the 2-turn slow. He's probably going to hit like a truck. I think that's okay. And then Denethor. Basically, I don't think they're going to be a good Chapter 2 squad, but what I think this is going to do is be able to tell us a lot about Chapter 3. So if we go to the kit here for Boromir down at the bottom, Captain of the White Tower is an incredibly important ability for Chapter 3 of the Mines of Moria raid, cleansing stacks of capture that may have accumulated too quickly. So to me, that means that capture is a bane that you can cleanse. That's going to be really important. So there are a few different things that I think can happen. It might be that you can only gain capture stacks if you have marked, in which case stealth is going to be very important. However, if you can accumulate capture stacks or whatever, regardless of whether you're marked or not, then I think probably cleanses are going to be more important. So it's going to come down to the details there. I'm leaning towards it being more of the first case, that you can only gain capture stacks if you're marked. And then that way you can kind of have multiple tanks, choose who's getting marked, and then you can kind of cleanse one while the other has got their taunt up, whatnot. I think that actually, thinking through it and looking at all the kits, that's what makes the most sense to me. Of course, the devil is in the details for all of these types of things. I'm excited to see what we have for Chapter 3, especially how we score points. It's probably still going to be killing orcs, in which case, the fact that they have so many AoEs is going to be pretty good as well. So my sort of prediction at this point, from what I've seen so far, is essentially they're replacing the bomber orc with an orc that can mark. Once marked, anytime that character like receives an attack or something like that, I think they're going to get a stack of capture. And then capture is going to have some amount of, negative benefits, probably based on the number of stacks that you have. So like 5 stacks is one effect, 10 stacks is another effect, essentially until your character is basically done. So I think what will determine whether this is going to be the best team for Chapter 3 or not is essentially how quickly you can get that immunity train rolling, where everybody on your team basically has immunity most of the time. How quickly can you get that rolling, and how much can you maintain it, I think is going to be the other big important thing. And if you can basically just have immunity all the time, then yeah, maybe you get a little slip up, and then Boromir's passive is what, kind of rights the ship, let's say. But otherwise, you're not too worried about it, and you're not worried about the cleanses. The interesting thing here is that essentially it's going to be a cookie cutter team. I don't really see who you could leave out. Maybe Harendale. I think you need Sergeant Aura for all of these defensives to basically guarantee that block. Not relying on block chance, but guaranteeing the block. But Harendale is nice because he has an AoE and he's got pretty decent damage. So I think he's also somebody you probably want to include, not to mention that everybody else has kind of kit synergy with Gondor stuff. So I think he's going to be pretty important as well. One last tidbit that I want to leave you with before I go is I actually think this could be an interesting counter for like baby Elrond teams in, let's say, a multi-squad PvP mode. And the reason I'm saying that is because Denethor has this ability to essentially, stun plus dispel 2 boons from all enemies. I think that's going to be really big. Not to mention that they also have all of these AoEs, so even if Eladin manages to get all of his provokes off, you can still kind of work around it by damaging everybody else at the same time. So those are kind of my stats with that. If you found this engaging or entertaining in any way, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And with that, take it easy.